Linux Migration Guide, Part 2. Sorry it has been so long since I last did a video about this. I have been focusing on many other things, but now, I feel like it is time for another video related to the Linux Migration Guide, for those of you wanting to switch from Windows or Mac OS to Linux. There are many things you must be aware of, such as, what do you use your PC for? Can you find a free and open source alternative to replace a closed source application you use? And there are so many more things to take into account when moving to Linux, including what distro you find best suits your needs. Linux has hundreds of distros to choose from, so this can make the transition a bit difficult. However, if you find something that works well for you, go with it, and stick with it. I use Linux Mint because I feel like it suits me best, but your opinion may be different. You may like a distro more focused towards gaming, or content creation, for whatever reason that may be, and if you're a privacy nut, you could opt to go with a private system like CubesOS. Another thing to remember when switching to Linux is that you have to use free and open source software only. No Adobe Photoshop or After Effects, or Microsoft Office. You will have to get used to it, and if you don't like it, don't switch to Linux. GIMP, DaVinci Resolve, and LibreOffice are fantastic alternatives to the paid-for equivalents, so if you want to move to Linux, plan ahead your applications you want to use on it. If you need Windows software on Linux, there are multiple methods you can use. First, a virtual machine provides easy access to a Windows system, regardless of what version you wish to use, and this is preferable if you're not keen on using the terminal to install Wine, a compatibility layer tool used to run Windows applications on Linux. But Wine and virtual machines cannot run super demanding software like FL Studio, Adobe After Effects, or anything that requires significant hardware resource usage. It will either work in suboptimal condition, or simply not work at all, so you need to be careful as to how you run your Windows software on Linux, as Wine is not the be-all and end-all of running Windows software on Linux. It's really only good for basic stuff, at least in my experience. A virtual machine is often better because it provides a familiar Windows environment, plus, you can set up shared folders between the two, so if you want stuff from the VM on your host machine, or vice versa, you can definitely do that. A virtual machine also keeps everything separate from your host machine, so if you only want your Windows software in one place, a Windows VM should be that very place. Wine is better if you prefer not to use virtualization software to run Windows on Linux, and Wine is often good when it comes to running stuff like Notepad++. This works flawlessly under Wine, and Play on Linux is another decent program to check out, if you want to run Windows games and other stuff on Linux. I find Wine to be useful for some things, but if you're going to use Linux daily, I think it's much better to find a free and open source alternative to replace that proprietary software. GIMP is an excellent replacement for Photoshop. Actual Document Viewer is a great replacement for Adobe Acrobat Reader, VirtualBox is a great replacement for VMware, and so on and so forth. So when moving to Linux, don't be afraid to ditch the paid-for software, unless you really need it, or rely on it for whatever reason. It's also advisable to look at the software store your chosen distribution has, because they usually contain a plethora of great free and open source applications for Linux in general, regardless of what your distro is based on. Some distros have better software stores than others. For example, I think the one in Mint is much better than the one in Ubuntu, because the Ubuntu one suffers from horrible search results, and I often cannot find stuff I need. Thus why I like Linux Mint's software store a lot more, because it actually provides decent search results. Now, this is not saying Ubuntu is bad, it's a great distro too, but I think Canonical could improve their software store to be more accurate with search results. If you're wondering what browsers work on Linux, then worry no more, because all of the browsers out there work on Linux. Firefox, Edge, Chrome, Chromium, Vivaldi, Brave, Tor, and many other browsers work on Linux, except Safari of course, that's only available to Apple users. The rise of free and open source software only means more people are going to at least try Linux, because Windows is becoming a garbage disposal unit with truckloads of user data being harvested, and Mac OS is so unaffordable for many of us, so our only real option is to go with a free and open source system like Linux, and if you want to go one step further, give a BSD operating system a try. Windows 10's end of support is almost less than 2 years away, and Windows 11's stupidly high hardware requirements are pricing poor people out of the PC market, so if you're poor and cannot afford a new PC that runs Windows 11, your only bet is to switch to Linux, even if it means ditching proprietary software and using free stuff only. Trust me, you will love it. In fact, I switched to Linux for a few reasons, one of which was because Windows 10 is no longer getting bug fixes or feature updates, and another one is that I hate Windows 11, so I do not wish to use it nor upgrade to it, and now that I use Linux, there is no going back to Windows for me. My days with that crappy OS are over. Well, not really. I still use Windows XP and 7 in virtual machines, but I love those versions. They were actually decenter and did not come with useless shit you don't need, nor did they track your every move. In the next video of this series, we will be looking at 3 distributions you can choose to go with if you're a beginner, and I will go over the pros and cons of each distro I show you. I will leave it up to you to guess what distributions I will be showing you. Alrighty, that's it for this video folks. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next Linux migration guide video. Bye for now.